In 2015, the Chicago community of Rogers Park was beginning to rapidly transform into a war zone. The Rogers Park neighborhood had been suffering severely from constant gang-related shootings. The recent May 31st murder of Shaquan Thomas was said to have been the cause of the bloodshed, with my video on Thomas going into more detail on his case. More commonly known as Young Pappy, Thomas was a Chicago rapper part of PBG, or Pooh Bear Gang. Young Pappy was no stranger to violence or the law, with it being said that the Chicago Police Department were happy when Thomas passed away. Not only had Young Pappy survived 2 assassination attempts, with 2 innocent people being killed by stray bullets, but he had also repeatedly dissed rival gang members in his super disrespectful and energetic music over the last few years. To CPD, he was a menace, and they were glad that he was no longer alive, but little did they know, his death would only lead to multiple other shootings and murders, impacting the lives of many more innocent people for the rest of their lives. A 22-year-old Lock City gang member named Clifton A.J. Fry was standing on a sidewalk in the 7600 block of North Ashland Avenue, close to Willie B. White Park, which is just across the street from Gale Elementary School. Standing close to an alley, AJ was unaware that an armed suspect had spotted him from a moving vehicle, looping back around, before proceeding to return on foot. The suspect snuck up on Fry, upping a revolver and blasting him twice in his back. AJ would hit the ground, with children playing in the nearby elementary school playground hearing the gunshots, and being escorted back into the safety of the school. Sadly, as gang violence had ramped up in recent times, children had been forced to witness blood-stained sidewalks being hosed down as they walked to school. Truly just as disturbing was the fact that a second man had actually nearly become a victim. To prevent himself from being shot, the man had tried to hide behind a 9 and 10-year-old. Fortunately, the suspect didn't take fire at the kids. As the elementary school went into lockdown, AJ would be left on the ground in critical condition. Upon being transported to present St. Francis Hospital in Evanston, he remained unresponsive, and was soon placed on a ventilator. After securing the school to make sure that the suspect wasn't hiding inside, an investigation began. It was soon learned that the victim was Clifton A.J. Fry, a local documented gang member. Following this information, an alleged motive for AJ's shooting was revealed. As mentioned, AJ was part of Lock City, a neighborhood gang who at this time were into it with PBG. An investigation into AJ would reveal that the 22-year-old had made a disrespectful social media post about Young Pappy following his recent murder. They believed that this post cost him his life. Jermal Dossie, an insane cutthroat gangster, and rapper better known as Pbg Spazz, was seen leaving an apartment building, being noticed getting into a car. Being followed a short distance, a marked police car was used to initiate a traffic stop, at which time Dossie was handcuffed and taken to the police station. An investigative alert stated that Pbg Spazz was involved in an aggravated battery with a firearm, in relation to Clifton Fry's shooting. However, the alert didn't specify the nature of Dossie's involvement. Pbg Spazz already had a juvenile warrant when he was arrested, but the arresting officers weren't aware of this. For whatever reason, the main arresting officer did not have an arrest or a search warrant for Dossie at the time of his arrest, yet he was still taken into custody. Later on, Pbg Spazz's arrest would be ruled unconstitutional, with police lacking probable cause for an arrest. This really marked the beginning of a flawed case. It wouldn't take long before Jermal Dossie was charged as an adult with the aggravated battery with a firearm, and now an additional attempted first-degree murder charge. His case would only get worse, as AJ soon passed away in hospital on June 18, 2015. At this point, Dossie was charged with murder. At just 17 years old, Dossie was now in a terrible situation. Not long prior to his arrest, and Pbg Spazz was starting to gain popularity in the music scene. He had only really just begun putting out music videos, having been seen in collaborations with other notable PBG rappers like Young Pappy, Lil Sean, and Bang Da Hitta. In my opinion, Boom was the best song featuring the young rapper. As this is Chicago, all 4 rappers were involved in street activity, with Pbg Spazz having already had a lengthy rap sheet. He had even been snitched on about a murder in the past. 22-year-old Blake Lamb, aligned with Lock City, would be found unresponsive in a park following a reported call of shots fired. The 2 suspects had both been on bikes, riding around in an alley for roughly 20 minutes before one of the suspects targeted Lamb. The suspect was wearing no shirt, leaving his bike with the second suspect. He would approach Lamb on foot, walking past him before suddenly spinning around, and shooting him 1 time. Lying on the ground, the suspect then stood over Lamb, firing an additional 5 to 6 times. The suspect then ran back to the alley, with both suspects fleeing on the bikes. Upon conducting interviews with people trying to get reduced time for their own crimes, Pbg Spazz's name was put forth for Blake Lamb's murder. A person who knew Dossie named Maurice Lee would say that word on the street was that Jermal Dossie was the gunman. In a separate interview, another man named Prince Taylor, who was doing a prison bid, would speak to police. Prince was a friend of Dossie, and claimed that upon him asking Dossie about the murder that occurred whilst he was locked up, Dossie outright confessed to murdering Blake Lamb, describing how he'd walked up on him and shot him in the back. It must be said that Pbg Spazz has not been charged with this murder. Back to the murder case that got Pbg Spazz arrested, and according to Assistant State's Attorney Akash Vyas, Jermal Dossie was in the back seat of a car when he spotted Fry. Dossie had seen him standing on the corner, and realized that he was the same person who had made a disrespectful comment on Facebook about young Pappy. The driver parked in a nearby alleyway, as Dossie, who was carrying a large handgun, ran toward the man and shot him twice, with witnesses hearing 3 to 4 gunshots. Dossie then ran back to the car, demanded to be driven away, and was later dropped off at Glenwood and Pratt Avenues in Rogers Park. Now, the case information sounds credible and straightforward. However, the officer testimony in the case paints a slightly different picture of what went down. Back to the day of the murder, and 2 narcotics officers were conducting surveillance in the Rogers Park neighborhood. Around 1 p.m., they observed the victim sitting in a red Pontiac, appearing to be taking part in a hand-to-hand narcotics transaction. The 2 officers somehow managed to lose sight of the red Pontiac, but a call for shots fired soon led them right back to the victim. Upon traveling to the scene, the same officers would find the victim lying on the ground. As officers and detectives showed up on scene, an officer would go into a nearby building to view a surveillance video. According to the officer, the video showed 2 black males in their teens or early 20s, dressed in dark clothing with hooded jackets. The footage showed the 2 men running eastbound on the south sidewalk of Jonquil Terrace, one holding a visible large barrel revolver, and the other suspect appearing to be clutching something in his left-hand jacket pocket. It should be noted that at least one of the officers watching the footage actually knew of Jermal Dossie. Even so, he couldn't make an identification from the footage. Upon further reviewing this same surveillance video, a red Hyundai Santa Fe was observed driving westbound on Jonquil, through the intersection with Ashland. A short while later, the same suspect vehicle drove eastbound through the intersection and out of frame of the camera. At this time, the 2 suspects emerged on screen, running from the direction of the car toward the intersection. At the intersection, one of the suspects turned onto Ashland Avenue. Now out of frame, he soon returned back into frame, with him and the other suspect then being seen sprinting back to the red Hyundai. The driver of the suspect car was quickly identified as Tyrone Crosby, with the car owner being his grandmother. Taken in for questioning, Crosby would tell detectives that he was driving the car at the time of the shooting. He had picked up 2 individuals, Spaz and Lil Sean. Having spotted Fry, the car had circled back, enabling the 2 suspects to ambush the victim. According to Crosby, Spaz was holding the revolver, and Lil Sean was appearing to clutch at his side, as if he was carrying a pistol. The day following the murder, and Tyrone Crosby went on to identify Spaz through a photograph. Once again, more problems emerged with the case. As it turned out, a court would find that Crosby had testified before a grand jury within a day of the actual shooting. It turned out that Dossie hadn't even been arrested at this time, and he'd remain free for another week. Not only hadn't Dossie been arrested, but records highlighted the fact that the police never even sought an arrest warrant having heard Crosby's story. This points toward them not deeming him a credible source, as he really gave police the bare minimum. To make matters worse for the case, information about Crosby's criminal background hadn't been looked into properly. Knowledge of his background information was virtually non-existent. As a result, Crosby's information was now less reliable in comparison to other witnesses. And speaking of other witnesses, the testimony of 3 witnesses left a lot of unanswered questions. Moreover, witnesses located at the scene had little information to give. The suspect descriptions were vague, with no discernible features being mentioned. Let's face it, the case was really screwed up from the beginning. All of these problems could explain the most recent update to this case. It has been said that Pbg Spazz received 20 years for aggravated battery with a firearm. Having been locked up since 2015, Spazz has already served close to 10 years already. Although some may argue that this is a win, I don't feel as though it is. Sure, Pbg Spazz isn't doing life. However, not only has Pbg Spazz lost his music career, but he has also lost his late teenage years and 20s to the system. In a recent incident, Pbg Spazz even got caught beating his meat to a female correctional officer, a common occurrence behind bars. If this isn't a sad state of affairs, then I don't know what is. This case just goes to show you how important your freedom is, and how quickly it can be taken from you. Whilst other people are progressing in life, making money and starting families, Pbg Spazz is stuck in a cell, missing his family and lost friends. He is unable to provide much support or money for his family, and by the time that he does make it home, the world will be an even more harder place for him to readjust back into. Hopefully, he can use the rest of his time to improve his mindset. Rest in peace to Clifton A.J. Fry. Thanks for watching.